My neighbor called me. "Come back immediately. Your son is robbing your house. He's taking out all the furniture." When I flung open the door, I saw scattered belongings and... Good day, dear listeners. It's Louisa again. I'm glad you're here with me. Please like this video and listen to my story till the end and let me know which city you're listening from. That way, I can see how far my story has traveled. My life had been quiet and predictable for the past 5 years, ever since my husband George passed away. I lived alone in our 3-bedroom house on Maple Street, the same house where we'd raised our son Derek. I spent my days tending to my garden, volunteering at the local library, and having coffee with my neighbor Patricia every Thursday morning. Derek visited occasionally, maybe once a month, always with some excuse about how busy he was with work. I understood. He was 32, trying to build his career, or so I thought. The first strange thing happened 3 weeks before everything fell apart. I came home from my book club meeting to find Derek's car in my driveway. He had a key, of course. I'd given it to him years ago for emergencies. When I walked in, he was coming down the stairs, slightly out of breath. "Mom, I didn't expect you back so early," he said, his smile too wide, too forced. "Book club ended early. Jean wasn't feeling well," I explained, setting down my purse. "What are you doing here, honey?" "Oh, I was just checking on that leak you mentioned last month, in the upstairs bathroom." He gestured vaguely toward the second floor. I frowned. "I never mentioned a leak." "Didn't you?" He laughed, but it sounded hollow. I must have been thinking of something else. "Anyway, everything looks fine. I should get going." He left quickly, too quickly. I went upstairs and checked the bathroom. Everything seemed normal. But when I went into my bedroom, I noticed my jewelry box had been moved slightly. The small antique chest that George had given me on our 20th anniversary sat at a different angle on my dresser. Had I moved it? I couldn't remember. The second incident was 2 weeks later. Patricia called me while I was at the grocery store. "Margaret, there's a woman at your house," she said, her voice uncertain. "She's with Derek. They're loading something into a van." My heart skipped. What kind of van? A rental truck. One of those U-Haul things. Should I call the police? No. Derek probably mentioned he was helping me donate some old furniture. I must have forgotten. The lie came easily, automatically. I didn't want to alarm Patricia, didn't want to believe what my gut was already telling me. But I hadn't asked Derek to help me with anything, and I certainly hadn't planned to donate any furniture. I abandoned my shopping cart and drove home faster than I should have. The van was gone by the time I arrived, but Derek's car was still there. I found him in the garage, sweating, looking guilty. "What's going on?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, you scared me." He wiped his forehead with his sleeve. That woman was from the charity pickup. They came for those old chairs you wanted to get rid of." "What chairs?" "The ones from the basement. You said they were just taking up space." I had said no such thing. The chairs in the basement were part of a dining set that had belonged to my mother. They were valuable, both sentimentally and monetarily. I went down to check. 3 of the 6 chairs were gone. "Derek, those chairs weren't for donation. They're antiques." His face hardened for just a moment before the mask of concern slipped back on. "Oh God, Mom, I'm so sorry. I must have misunderstood. I'll call them right now and get them back." He never did. That's when I started paying attention, really paying attention. I noticed small things missing over the next few days: a silver picture frame, a crystal vase, a first edition book from George's collection. Each item small enough that I might not notice immediately, valuable enough to matter. Then came the phone call that changed everything. I had just returned from my morning walk when my phone rang. Patricia's voice was urgent, almost panicked. "Margaret, you need to come home right now." "I am home, Patricia. I just walked in the door." "No, I mean, Margaret, your son is robbing your house. He's taking everything. There's a truck in your driveway and he's carrying out your furniture. My blood ran cold. Call the police. I'm coming. Are you sure? I don't want to. Call them. Now. I hung up and ran. My house was only 2 doors down from Patricia's. When I got there, I saw it. A large moving truck parked in my driveway, its back door open, and Derek, my own son, carrying my grandmother's antique side table down my front steps. A woman I'd never seen before, thin, blonde, probably in her late 20s, was directing him, clipboard in hand. I threw open my front door. The scene inside made my stomach drop. My living room looked like a tornado had torn through it. Furniture was pushed aside, drawers hung open, their contents spilled across the floor. The antique cabinet where I kept my mother's china, empty. The oriental rug George and I had bought on our trip to Turkey, rolled up and leaning against the wall, ready to be loaded. My wedding photos were scattered across the couch, removed from their frames. The frames, of course, were sterling silver. Derek froze when he saw me, the table still in his hands. The blonde woman looked annoyed rather than guilty. "Mom," Derek said, his voice strained, "this isn't what it looks like." "Really?" My voice came out sharper than I intended, shaking with anger and something worse, betrayal. "Because it looks like you're stealing from me." "We're not stealing," the woman interjected, stepping forward. She had cold blue eyes and a smile that didn't reach them. "I'm Vanessa, Derek's fiancée. He didn't tell you? We're helping you downsize. Derek said you were struggling to maintain this big house, that you wanted to move into a senior living facility." The lie was so audacious, so boldly delivered, that for a moment I couldn't speak. "I never said any such thing." Derek set down the table carefully, too carefully. "Mom, we talked about this, remember? Last month you said the house was getting to be too much. I said mowing the lawn was tiring. That's not the same as wanting to give away everything I own." Vanessa exchanged a look with Derek, a look that said they'd prepared for this. "Mrs. Walsh, Derek mentioned you've been forgetting things lately. It's okay. It happens at your age. We're just trying to help." My age. I was 68, not senile. The manipulation was so transparent, yet so calculated. They were building a narrative. The confused elderly mother, the concerned son trying to help. How long had they been planning this? I heard sirens in the distance. Patricia had called the police. "You need to leave," I said quietly. "Both of you. Put everything back and leave my house." "Mom, please," Derek started. "The police are on their way. If you're not gone in 60 seconds, I'm pressing charges." Vanessa's mask slipped for just a second, revealing something ugly underneath. "You'd really call the cops on your own son?" "Try me." They left, but not before Derek loaded the table into the truck anyway. Vanessa grabbed several of the silver frames. They took what they could carry in those frantic seconds, driving away just as the police car turned onto my street. The officer who responded was young, maybe 25, with kind eyes and a notebook. Officer Martinez. He listened patiently as I explained, wrote everything down, took photos of the disarray. "Ma'am, I understand this is difficult, but he's your son. He has a key. You said he's taken things before and you didn't report it. Legally, this gets complicated. He was robbing me." "I believe you. But a prosecutor will ask, did you give him permission to be here? Do you have proof he didn't have permission to take these items? Has he ever helped you move things before?" I saw where this was going. Without witnesses to our argument, without proof of what was said, it became a he said, she said situation. And Derek, I realized with growing dread, had been clever. He'd established a pattern, the leak visit, the charity donation, always with some plausible explanation. "What can I do?" I asked. "Document everything, change your locks. If he comes back without permission, call us immediately. You might also want to consult with an attorney about a restraining order." After Officer Martinez left, I walked through my house, making a list. The 3 dining chairs, gone. The silver frames, 5 of them, gone. My mother's china set, gone. The Turkish rug. They'd left it, but only because they'd run out of time. I estimated they'd taken at least $15,000 worth of items, possibly more. I sat down at my kitchen table, my hands shaking. This wasn't just theft. This was my son, my child, the boy I'd raised, whose scraped knees I'd bandaged, whose nightmares I'd soothed. How had he become this? But grief was a luxury I couldn't afford right now. I needed to think. Patricia came over an hour later with tea and sympathy. "What are you going to do?" That's when it crystallized for me. I wasn't going to roll over. I wasn't going to be the confused old woman they wanted me to be. "I'm going to get everything back," I said. "And I'm going to make sure they never do this to anyone else." How? I didn't know yet, but I was going to figure it out. First step, change the locks. Second step, security cameras. Third step, documentation. Photos of everything that remained, receipts, appraisals, anything that could prove ownership and value. And then I was going to war. The locksmith came the next morning. His name was Frank, a burly man in his 50s who'd been changing locks in our neighborhood for 20 years. While he worked, I explained the situation in vague terms. Family dispute. Needed new security. "You want me to install deadbolts too?" he asked. "And maybe a chain lock?" "Yes, everything you can do to make this house secure." Within 2 hours, Derek's key was useless. It felt like a small victory, but a victory nonetheless. The security cameras arrived 2 days later. I'd ordered them online after spending an entire night researching home security systems. I chose ones with motion detection and cloud storage. Everything would be recorded and saved remotely, where Derek couldn't access or delete it. I hired a handyman to install them at every entrance: front door, back door, garage, and one overlooking the driveway. On day 3, I visited my attorney. Robert Chen had handled George's will and our estate planning. He was meticulous, sharp, and unflappable. I trusted him. "Margaret," he said, gesturing to the chair across from his desk. "What brings you in?" I told him everything. He listened without interrupting, occasionally jotting notes on his legal pad. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair. "This is elder abuse, potentially. Financial exploitation. The problem is proving intent and establishing a pattern. I have the police report from the other day." "That helps, but it's not enough. You need more evidence. Do you have any financial documents? Bank statements? Anything showing unauthorized transactions?" I froze. I hadn't thought about my bank accounts. I need to check." "Do that. Today. And I want you to pull your credit report. If he has access to your personal information, he might be doing more than just taking furniture." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. I went straight from Robert's office to my bank. The manager, Linda Reyes, had known me for 15 years. She pulled up my accounts while I waited, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Mrs. Walsh, when did you add Derek as a joint account holder?" The world tilted. I didn't. She turned her monitor toward me. There it was, in black and white. 3 months ago, Derek had been added to my primary checking account with full access. The signature looked like mine, but I'd never signed any such document. "That's not my signature," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Linda's expression shifted from professional courtesy to genuine concern. "Are you saying this is fraudulent?" "Yes." She made several calls while I sat there, numb. Security. Fraud department. A specialist who asked me detailed questions about my signature, about Derek, about when I'd last accessed my account in person. The numbers told a damning story. Over the past 3 months, Derek had withdrawn nearly $40,000 from my account. Small amounts at first, $500 here, $1,000 there, then larger sums. The last withdrawal had been for $8,000, just 2 days before the moving truck incident. $40,000, my retirement savings. The money George and I had carefully saved for decades. "We're freezing the account immediately," the fraud specialist said, "and we'll be filing a report with law enforcement. You'll need to sign an affidavit stating that these transactions were unauthorized." I signed everything they put in front of me. My hand was steady now. The shock had burned away, leaving only cold, hard determination. That evening, Derek called. I let it go to voicemail. He called 3 more times. On the 4th call, I answered. "Mom, we need to talk. I have nothing to say to you." "Don't be like this. I can explain." "Explain forging my signature? Explain stealing $40,000 from my bank account?" Silence. Then, "Who told you about that?" "The bank. When I discovered you'd fraudulently added yourself as a joint account holder." I could hear him breathing, calculating. When he spoke again, his voice had changed, harder, uglier. "You're making a mistake, Mom. That money was for your care, for your future. You're not getting any younger, and someone needs to manage your finances before you waste it all. The only waste I see is you. We're family. You can't do this to family. You stopped being my family when you became a thief. Don't call me again. Any further contact goes through my attorney." I hung up. My hands were shaking, but not from fear, from rage. Vanessa must have been listening, coaching him. This was their play: paint me as incompetent, claim they were protecting my interests. But they'd made a critical mistake. They'd left a paper trail. Robert called me that night after I emailed him the bank documents. "Margaret, this is solid evidence. We can pursue criminal charges for fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation of an elderly person. We can also file for a restraining order. Do it. All of it. Are you sure? This will destroy your relationship with your son." "He destroyed it first. I'm just making it official." The point of no return had passed. There was no going back now. Robert filed the restraining order petition on Monday morning. By Wednesday, we had a court date. The criminal fraud charges would take longer. The district attorney's office needed to review the evidence, but the restraining order was immediate protection. Derek was served with the papers on Thursday afternoon. I know because 30 minutes later, my phone exploded with messages. From Derek. "How could you do this to me?" From a number I didn't recognize. Vanessa, I assumed. "This is insane. He's your son." From Derek again. "You're going to regret this." I blocked both numbers. Then Derek showed up at my house. The security camera caught everything. I watched from my living room window as he pounded on the door, his face red with rage. "Mom, open this door! We need to talk about this!" I called 911. "There's someone violating a restraining order at my residence," I said calmly. "He's banging on my door and refusing to leave. Derek must have heard me through the door because he stopped pounding. Through the window, I saw him look directly at the camera above the garage. His expression shifted from anger to something more calculated. "I'm not leaving until we talk," he shouted. The police arrived in 6 minutes. I recognized Officer Martinez from before. He approached Derek with one hand on his belt, professional but alert. "Sir, you need to step away from the residence. This is my mother's house. I have a right." "You have a restraining order, sir. You're in violation. You need to leave now or I'll have to arrest you." I watched through the window as Derek argued, gesticulated, tried to explain. Officer Martinez remained unmoved. Finally, Derek got in his car and drove away, but not before shouting toward the house. "This isn't over, Mom. You can't hide behind lawyers forever." Officer Martinez came to my door. I let him in, showed him the security footage, gave him a copy to file with the restraining order violation report. Ma'am, he's escalating. I want you to be very careful. Do you have somewhere else you can stay for a few days? This is my home. I'm not leaving. He nodded, understanding. Then keep your doors locked, keep your phone charged, and call us if he comes back. The violation will strengthen your case. After he left, I poured myself a glass of wine, something I rarely did, and sat in George's old armchair. My hands were finally shaking. The confrontation had taken more out of me than I'd admitted. The next day, Friday, Vanessa showed up. Alone. She didn't pound on the door like Derek. She rang the doorbell politely, smiled at the camera, and held up a Tupperware container. Mrs. Walsh, I brought you some cookies. Can we talk? Just woman to woman? I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened the door but left the chain lock engaged. You have 30 seconds. Her smile widened, but it was all teeth, no warmth. I think we got off on the wrong foot. Derek is devastated. He loves you so much and he's worried about you. This whole legal thing, it's just a misunderstanding that's gotten out of control. He stole from me. He was trying to help you. Look, I know families can be complicated, but Derek is your son, your only child. Do you really want to destroy that relationship over money? The manipulation was textbook. Appeal to family bonds, minimize the crime, make me feel guilty. The relationship was destroyed when he forged my signature and stole $40,000. Now leave my property. Her mask slipped. You're a stubborn old woman, you know that? You're going to die alone in this house and no one will care. Derek is all you have. Then I'll die alone. Now get off my property before I call the police. She left the cookies on my doorstep, a parting gesture of false kindness for the cameras. I threw them in the garbage. That weekend, they left me alone. No calls, no visits, no messages. The silence was worse than the confrontation. I knew they were planning something. I spent Saturday and Sunday resting. Patricia came over with lunch both days, and we sat in my garden, not talking about Derek or Vanessa or any of it. We talked about her grandchildren, about the new restaurant downtown, about the upcoming library fundraiser. Normal things, healing things. By Monday morning, I felt steadier, stronger. The fear had transformed into something harder, more resilient. I was ready for whatever came next. On Tuesday, a letter arrived. Not delivered by mail, but slipped under my door sometime during the night. The security cameras had been disabled. Someone had spray-painted the lenses black around 3 a.m. The letter was handwritten. Derek's familiar scrawl. Mom, I'm sorry. I know I messed up badly. Vanessa convinced me that we were helping you, but I see now that we crossed lines we shouldn't have crossed. The money, I can pay it back. All of it. I got a second mortgage on my condo. I can have a check to you by Friday. The restraining order is killing me. You're my mother. I made mistakes, but don't I deserve a chance to make this right? Can we meet? Just once? Somewhere public, if that makes you comfortable. I need to apologize face to face. I need you to see that I'm still your son. Please, Mom, I'm begging you, let me fix this. Derek. I read it twice, standing in my entryway, my coffee growing cold in my other hand. The letter was good. The apology seemed genuine. The offer to repay the money was tempting. For a moment, just a moment, I felt the pull of maternal instinct, the desire to believe that my son was truly sorry. Then I noticed the details he'd left out. No mention of the forged signature. No mention of the furniture and antiques he'd stolen. No acknowledgement of Vanessa's role beyond saying she convinced him, making himself the victim of her influence. And the cameras. He didn't mention vandalizing my security cameras at all. This wasn't an apology. This was strategy. I called Robert. Don't respond, he advised. Don't meet him. This is a classic manipulation tactic, love bombing after aggression. He wants to get you alone without witnesses, to pressure you into dropping the charges. I know, I said. And I did know. But hearing Robert confirm it steadied me. I didn't respond to the letter. Instead, I called the security company and had them install new cameras with tamper-proof casings and battery backup. If Derek came back to vandalize them again, the footage would be saved before he could do any damage. Wednesday brought flowers. 24 red roses delivered to my door with a card. I'm sorry, Mom. I love you. Derek. I gave them to Patricia. She put them in her daughter's grave at the cemetery. Sarah would have appreciated them, she said. And Derek doesn't deserve to have you think about him every time you see them. Thursday, more gifts arrived. A framed photo of Derek as a child, sitting on my lap at his 5th birthday party. A bracelet I'd mentioned liking once, years ago, during a shopping trip we'd taken together. A book by my favorite author, first edition, inscribed with a message. To Mom, who taught me to love reading. I'm sorry for everything. Each gift was calculated to tug at my heartstrings, to remind me of the good times, to make me doubt my resolve. I felt nothing but cold clarity. On Friday, the check arrived, as promised. $40,000, drawn on Derek's account. With another letter. Mom, this is everything I took. I know money can't fix what I broke, but it's a start. Please, can we talk now? I took the check to Robert. Can I cash this? Legally, yes, but it might complicate the criminal case. The prosecutor might argue that by accepting repayment, you're indicating forgiveness or settlement. I don't want to settle. I want him prosecuted. Then don't cash it yet. Let me talk to the DA's office. We might be able to use this as evidence of his guilt. He wouldn't repay money he didn't steal. That same afternoon, I received an unexpected phone call from a woman named Susan Hartley. She'd seen my case mentioned in a community newsletter about elder fraud prevention. Mrs. Walsh, I hope you don't mind me reaching out. My name is Susan, and, well, your son stole from me too. I sat down slowly. What? 3 years ago, I hired Derek to do some contracting work on my house. He was recommended by a friend. He seemed so nice, so professional. Over 6 months, he convinced me to give him payments for materials that were never delivered, work that was never done. By the time I realized what was happening, he'd taken almost $30,000. Did you press charges? I tried, but he claimed it was a business dispute, that I'd approved all the expenses. His lawyer made me look like a confused old woman who didn't understand contracts. The case was dismissed. My blood ran cold. This wasn't Derek's first time. This was a pattern. Susan, would you be willing to talk to my attorney and to the police? Absolutely. I want to help. I should have fought harder back then. Maybe if I had, he wouldn't have done this to you. We talked for an hour. She gave me names of 2 other women Derek had scammed. A network of victims, all elderly, all too embarrassed or too tired to fight. Not anymore. We were fighting now. Sunday afternoon, my doorbell rang. I checked the camera feed on my phone. Derek stood on my porch, dressed in a suit, holding a bouquet of lilies, my favorite flowers. Next to him was Vanessa, also dressed nicely, her hair pulled back, makeup subtle. They looked like they were going to church. Respectable. Harmless. I almost didn't answer. But something in Derek's posture, the slight slump of his shoulders, the way he looked down at his shoes, made me curious. Was this genuine remorse? I opened the door, chain lock still engaged. Mom, Derek said softly, please, just give us 5 minutes. We're not here to fight. We want to apologize properly. Against my better judgment, I let them in. I told myself it was to see what they'd say, to gather more evidence if needed. But part of me, a small, wounded part, wanted to believe my son could still be redeemed. They sat on my couch. I remained standing, arms crossed. "Mrs. Walsh," Vanessa began, her voice gentle, "I owe you an enormous apology. I pushed Derek into things he shouldn't have done. I was thinking about our future, about starting a family, and I got greedy. I'm ashamed of myself." Derek nodded along, his expression pained. "It's true, Mom. Vanessa and I have been under so much financial pressure. Her student loans, my condo mortgage, and we found out last month that she's pregnant. Pregnant. The word hung in the air like bait. We panicked," Vanessa continued, reaching for Derek's hand. "We thought if we could just get a little help from your estate. You have so much, and you're all alone in this big house. We could get on our feet. It was wrong. We see that now. You took $40,000, I said flatly. You stole my mother's china. You forged my signature." Derek's face crumpled. "I know, and I've paid back every penny. The check is there. You can cash it whenever you want. As for the furniture and items, I'll return everything this week. I've kept it all in storage. Nothing's been sold." This was new information. If he really had everything in storage, that changed things. "Why should I believe you?" I asked. "Because you're going to be a grandmother," Vanessa said, her hand moving to her stomach in a practiced gesture. "And I don't want my child to grow up without knowing their grandmother. Derek made mistakes, but he's a good man. He deserves another chance. We all do." The manipulation was exquisite. The pregnancy revelation, the promise of a grandchild, the appeal to family legacy. Every word carefully chosen to exploit my emotions. "All we're asking," Derek said, standing up slowly, "is that you drop the restraining order and the criminal charges. Let us make this right privately, as a family. The legal stuff, it's going to destroy our lives. I could go to jail. Our baby would be born with their father in prison." "Is that what you want?" I looked at my son. Really looked at him. I searched his face for any sign of the boy I'd raised, the child who'd cried when we had to put down our old dog, who'd insisted on making me breakfast in bed on Mother's Day, even though he could barely reach the stove. That boy was gone. Or maybe he'd never really existed. "You're lying," I said quietly. Vanessa's eyes flashed. "Excuse me? The pregnancy. You're not pregnant. This is just another manipulation. How dare you?" Vanessa started to stand, her mask cracking. "Because you were drinking wine at my house when you first came here with the moving truck. I saw the glass in your hand before I confronted you. And pregnant women don't drink wine." Derek's face went pale. Vanessa's mouth opened and closed like a fish. "Get out of my house." "Mom, listen," Derek tried. "Get out." Vanessa stood up, and suddenly, the sweet, apologetic woman was gone. Her face twisted into something ugly and vicious. "You stupid old bitch. We were giving you a way out. We were being nice. But you know what? Fine. You want to play hardball? We'll play hardball. Derek is your only family. When you're dying alone in a hospital, when you need someone to make decisions for you, who do you think that's going to be? We'll put you in the cheapest nursing home we can find and sell this house out from under you. You think you're winning? You're not. You're just guaranteeing that your last years will be miserable and alone." Derek grabbed her arm. "Vanessa, stop." She shook him off. "No. She needs to hear this. You think you're so smart, Margaret? You're just a bitter old woman clutching onto things that don't matter. Your precious furniture, your precious money. You can't take it with you when you die. At least we would have put it to use." I walked to the door and opened it. "Leave? Now. Before I call the police." They left, but Vanessa's parting words echoed through my house. You'll regret this. You'll die regretting this. After they were gone, I sat in George's chair, my heart pounding. My hands were shaking again. Vanessa's words had hit their mark, the fear of dying alone, of being helpless, of being forgotten. But beneath the fear, something harder crystallized. Determination, pure, cold determination. They'd shown me exactly who they were, and I was going to make sure everyone else saw it too. The court hearing for the restraining order was scheduled for Tuesday at 10 a.m. Robert had prepared me thoroughly. We had the bank records, the police reports, the security camera footage of Derek violating the previous temporary order, and statements from Susan Hartley and the 2 other women Derek had defrauded. But I had one more piece of evidence that Robert didn't know about yet. Sunday night, after Derek and Vanessa's visit, I'd gone through every drawer, every box, every corner of my house. In George's old desk, tucked in a file labeled Derek Childhood, I found something that made my blood run cold. Letters. At least a dozen of them, dating back 5 years. Letters from collection agencies, final notices, eviction warnings. All addressed to Derek, all sent to my house. He'd been using my address for years, probably to hide his financial troubles from landlords and creditors. And in the same folder, I found photocopies of checks I'd written him over the years. Small amounts, a few hundred here and there for emergencies. I'd forgotten about most of them, but someone had kept copies. Someone had been building a file, documenting every penny I'd ever given Derek, as if preparing to claim I'd been supporting him all along, that he was entitled to my money, that someone was Derek. I brought everything to Robert on Monday morning. "This shows premeditation," he said, his eyes scanning the documents. "He's been planning this for years. Margaret, this is going to help us significantly." Tuesday morning, I dressed carefully. A navy blue suit George had always said made me look distinguished. Pearl earrings, my mother's watch. I wanted to look competent, sharp, undeniably in control of my faculties. Patricia drove me to the courthouse. "You've got this," she said, squeezing my hand. "Show them who you are." The courtroom was smaller than I'd expected. Derek and Vanessa sat at one table with their attorney, a slick-looking man in an expensive suit named Martin Pierce. Robert and I sat at another. A handful of observers filled the gallery. Susan Hartley, the other victims Derek had scammed, and a reporter from the local newspaper who'd gotten wind of the case. The judge, Honorable Sandra Morrison, was a woman in her early 60s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes. She reviewed the filings in silence before looking up. "This is a hearing for a permanent restraining order filed by Margaret Walsh against her son, Derek Walsh, and his associate, Vanessa Chen. I've reviewed the temporary order and the violation report. Mr. Pierce, your client violated the temporary restraining order within 48 hours of being served. That's not a good start." Pierce stood smoothly. "Your Honor, my client made an error in judgment driven by emotional distress. He was served with shocking legal papers accusing him of theft from his own mother. He went to speak with her, to understand what was happening. It was not a violation made with malicious intent. The intent doesn't matter. The law was broken. Continue." Pierce outlined their defense. "Derek had been helping me manage my affairs with my permission. The bank account access had been authorized. They had a signature. The furniture removal was to prepare the house for sale, something I'd allegedly agreed to during a conversation about downsizing. It was all lies, smoothly delivered. Then it was our turn." Robert presented the evidence methodically. The forged signature on the bank documents, verified by a handwriting expert. The security footage of Derek loading furniture, while I shouted at him to stop. The police report from that incident. Then he called me to testify. I walked to the stand, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth. "Mrs. Walsh," Robert began gently, "can you describe your relationship with your son before these incidents began?" I took a breath. I loved my son. I trusted him completely. That trust was a mistake. When did you first become aware that he was stealing from you? I recounted everything. The mysterious visit, the missing chairs, Patricia's phone call, the moving truck. My voice remained steady, factual. I didn't cry, didn't show anger, just cold, clear truth. Then Robert asked the question we'd prepared. Mrs. Walsh, did you at any time give Derek Walsh permission to access your bank account or remove items from your home? No, never. Pierce cross-examined me, trying to suggest I was confused, forgetful, that Derek had been managing my affairs for years with my knowledge. Isn't it true, Mrs. Walsh, that you're 68 years old and living alone? That you've experienced memory issues? I'm 68, yes. I live alone because my husband died, not because I'm incapable. And I have no memory issues. I remember every single item Derek stole and every dollar he took. Would you like me to list them? Judge Morrison's lips twitched, almost a smile. Pierce tried another angle. You gave your son a key to your house. Doesn't that indicate trust and permission for him to be there? I also trusted him not to rob me. I was wrong. Then Robert called Susan Hartley to the stand. Susan testified about Derek's contractor scam, how he'd manipulated her, taken her money, and then painted her as a confused elderly woman when she fought back. It's the same pattern, she said, looking directly at Derek. He finds vulnerable older women, gains their trust, and then exploits them. I should have warned people. I should have stopped him years ago. Derek's attorney objected, but the damage was done. Finally, Robert presented the folder from George's desk, the collection letters, the eviction notices, the photocopied checks. Your Honor, this shows that Derek Walsh has been financially unstable for years and has been systematically using his mother as a resource. He's been planning this exploitation for a long time. I watched Derek's face as the evidence piled up. He'd started the hearing looking confident, wronged, the dutiful son accused unjustly. Now he looked cornered, desperate. Vanessa whispered urgently in his ear, but he just shook his head. Judge Morrison reviewed the documents one more time. Then she looked at Derek. Mr. Walsh, do you have anything to say before I rule? Derek stood. His voice shook. Your Honor, she's my mother. I made mistakes, but I was trying to help. You forged her signature on bank documents. I thought she wanted me to. You violated the temporary restraining order within 2 days. I just needed to talk to her. You stole $40,000 from her account and an estimated $15,000 in property. Derek's mouth opened and closed. No more smooth explanations. No more excuses. Just the raw truth of what he'd done, exposed under the courtroom lights. I'm sorry. I'll make it right. Please, don't. Mr. Walsh, sit down. He sat. Judge Morrison's voice was cold as winter. Permanent restraining order granted. Mr. Walsh, you are prohibited from contacting Margaret Walsh by any means. No calls, no letters, no third-party communication. You are prohibited from coming within 500 feet of her residence or any location where she is present. This order is effective for 5 years. Derek's face crumbled. Vanessa grabbed his arm, her face pale. Furthermore, the judge continued, I am forwarding this case file to the district attorney with a recommendation for criminal prosecution for elder fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation. This hearing is adjourned. The gavel came down. I'd won. 3 months later, I sat in the same courtroom for Derek's criminal trial. The district attorney, a sharp woman named Karen Foster, had taken the case personally after reviewing the evidence. Elder financial abuse is one of the fastest-growing crimes in America, she'd told me during our preparation meeting, and it's often perpetrated by family members who think they'll get away with it because their victims are too ashamed or too scared to fight back. You fighting back, it matters. The trial lasted 4 days. The prosecution presented our evidence, the forged bank documents, the security footage, the testimony from Susan Hartley and the other victims, the collection letters showing Derek's financial desperation, and the folder of photocopied checks proving premeditation. Derek's defense tried to paint him as a desperate man making poor choices out of concern for his mother's well-being. But the evidence was overwhelming. On the witness stand, Derek finally cracked. Under cross-examination, when Karen Foster asked him directly, "Did you forge Margaret Walsh's signature on the bank authorization form?" He broke down. "Yes," he sobbed. "Yes, I did it. I needed the money. I was going to lose everything. My condo, my car, everything. Mom had so much just sitting there, and I thought she wouldn't miss it. I thought I could pay it back before she noticed." "And the furniture? The family heirlooms?" "Vanessa said we could sell them online. She found buyers. We needed the money for the baby." He stopped, realizing what he'd said. "The baby that doesn't exist?" Karen asked pointedly. "The pregnancy that was fabricated to manipulate your mother during your visit on March 18th? Derek's attorney objected, but it was too late. The jury had heard it all. Vanessa was called to testify as a co-conspirator. She tried to maintain her composure, but under pressure, she admitted to researching the value of my antiques online, to creating fake charity donation receipts to explain the missing items, to coaching Derek on what to say. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she said, tears running down her face. Real tears this time, not the practiced kind. "We were just going to take a few things. She's old. She wasn't using them. We needed money to start our life together. Is that so wrong?" "Yes," Karen Foster said simply. "It is." The jury deliberated for 3 hours. Guilty on all counts: elder financial abuse, forgery, fraud, theft, conspiracy. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. Derek's attorney pleaded for leniency, citing his previously clean record, his remorse, his potential for rehabilitation. I was allowed to give a victim impact statement. I stood before the court and looked at my son, really looked at him, for what I knew would be the last time. "Derek," I said, my voice clear and unwavering, "you are my son, and part of me will always love the child you were. But the man you became is a stranger to me. You didn't just steal my money or my possessions. You stole my trust. You stole my peace of mind. You made me question my own judgment, my own memory, my own worth." Derek was crying, head in his hands. "I spent weeks wondering what I did wrong as a mother. How did I raise someone capable of this? But I've realized that this isn't about my failures. This is about your choices. You chose greed over integrity. You chose manipulation over honesty. You chose to see me not as your mother, but as a resource to be exploited." I paused, gathering my thoughts. "The saddest part is that if you had simply asked me for help, honest help, I might have given it. I might have helped you with your debts, helped you get back on your feet. But you didn't ask, you stole. And in doing so, you destroyed our relationship beyond repair." The judge sentenced Derek to 4 years in state prison, followed by 5 years of probation. Vanessa, as an accessory, received 2 years and probation. All of my possessions were ordered returned. The $40,000 Derek had paid back was confirmed as restitution. Additionally, he was ordered to pay an additional $20,000 in damages and court costs. As they led Derek away in handcuffs, he looked back at me one last time. His mouth formed the word "Mom," but no sound came out. I didn't look away. I wanted him to see that I was not the confused, vulnerable old woman he'd tried to make me. I was Margaret Walsh, and I had won. Outside the courthouse, reporters asked for my comments. I kept it brief. I hope this case sends a message that elder abuse will not be tolerated. Family doesn't mean you get to steal. Love doesn't mean you get to exploit. And age doesn't mean you can't fight back. Susan Hartley hugged me, tears in her eyes. "Thank you. Thank you for doing what I couldn't." The other victims thanked me too. One woman, Emily, said she was filing charges against her nephew, who'd been stealing her Social Security checks for years. "You gave me courage," she said. That night, I sat in my living room, my furniture returned, my mother's china back in its cabinet, my mother's watch on my wrist, and I felt something I hadn't felt in months. Peace. It was over. I had won. Not just the trial, but something bigger. I had proven to myself that I was not weak, not helpless, not a victim. I was a fighter, and I had won my life back. 6 months after the trial, my life had transformed in ways I never expected. The local newspaper had run a feature story about my case, which was picked up by regional news, then by a national network. Suddenly, I was receiving calls from advocacy groups, senior centers, legal aid organizations, all wanting me to share my story. I became a volunteer speaker for the Elder Justice Coalition, traveling to community centers and retirement communities to talk about financial abuse and how to protect yourself. At first, I was nervous standing before audiences, but Patricia came with me to the first few events, and her steady presence gave me courage. "You're a natural," she said, after my third speaking engagement. "People listen to you because you're real. You're not some expert talking down to them. You're someone who lived it and fought back." The speaking engagements led to other opportunities. A local law firm asked me to consult on elder abuse cases, helping them understand the victim's perspective. I wasn't a lawyer, but I could identify the manipulation tactics, the emotional exploitation, the specific ways abusers targeted vulnerable seniors. I was paid for this work, not a fortune, but enough that my depleted savings account began to recover. More importantly, I'd found purpose. For years after George died, I'd been drifting, filling my days with book clubs and garden work, pleasant enough but ultimately empty. Now, I was making a difference. I helped Susan Hartley sue Derek in civil court for the money he'd stolen from her years ago. We won. Emily filed criminal charges against her nephew, and when she was scared to go through with it, I sat with her at every court hearing, holding her hand the way Susan had held mine. My house, once a silent museum to the past, became alive again. Patricia and I hosted weekly gatherings for a support group we'd started. Survivors of financial abuse, mostly seniors, mostly women. We shared stories, resources, legal strategies, and most importantly, the knowledge that we weren't alone. I renovated George's old office into a proper workspace, complete with a computer where I could video chat with advocacy groups across the country. I learned technology I'd never bothered with before: Zoom, email lists, social media platforms where I shared resources about financial safety. My garden thrived that summer. I'd forgotten how therapeutic it was to dig in the soil, to plant seeds and watch them grow. Patricia and I spent hours there, talking about everything and nothing, healing in the sunshine. And then, unexpectedly, I met someone. His name was Henry, a retired accountant who volunteered with the Elder Justice Coalition. He'd attended one of my speaking events and approached me afterward with suggestions for how seniors could better protect their financial documents. We started having coffee after volunteer meetings, then dinner, then weekend trips to museums and botanical gardens. "I'm not trying to replace George," he told me one evening as we walked through the park. "I know you loved him, but maybe there's room in your life for something new." There was. I was 69 years old, and I was falling in love again. It felt like a gift I didn't deserve, but was grateful to receive. Meanwhile, Derek's life had taken a very different trajectory. I heard updates occasionally, though I tried not to seek them out. He was in state prison, serving his sentence. Vanessa had broken up with him immediately after her own sentencing. Apparently, love didn't survive prison bars and public humiliation. Derek's condo had been foreclosed on while he was awaiting trial. His car had been repossessed. When he was released on parole after serving 2.5 years, he had nothing. According to Patricia, who still had connections in Derek's old neighborhood, he was living in a halfway house, working at a warehouse loading dock for minimum wage. His criminal record made it nearly impossible to find better employment. He'd tried to contact me once through a letter forwarded by his parole officer. I didn't open it. I gave it to Robert, who reviewed it to ensure Derek wasn't violating the restraining order, then filed it away. "It's an apology," Robert told me, "and a request to meet. He says he's in therapy working on himself and wants to make amends." "No," I said simply. Some bridges once burned should stay ashes. Vanessa's life had imploded even more spectacularly. Her fraud conviction meant she lost her job in marketing. She'd been living with Derek before the arrests, and when that fell apart, she moved back in with her parents in another state. But the story didn't end there. Apparently, Vanessa had tried to run a similar scam on an elderly man in her hometown. She'd befriended him at a church, offered to help him organize his finances, and started writing checks to herself from his account. But he had a daughter who was an FBI agent. Vanessa was arrested for her second fraud offense within a year of completing her probation for the first. Last I heard, she was serving a 7-year federal sentence. I felt no satisfaction hearing about their failures. Just a distant, detached acknowledgement that actions have consequences. My life had become full in ways I'd never imagined. I had purpose, community, love, and most importantly, I had myself back. The woman I'd lost after George died, the strong, confident, capable woman I'd been, had returned. Every morning, I looked at myself in the mirror and saw not a victim, but a survivor, a fighter, a woman who'd stood up for herself and won. That was worth more than any amount of money Derek could have stolen. So what did I learn? Trust must be earned, even from family. Age doesn't equal weakness. It's never too late to fight for yourself. Sometimes the people who should protect you are the ones you need protection from. When that happens, choose yourself. What would you do if someone you loved betrayed you? Would you fight back? If my story helped you, please share it. So many seniors suffer silently from family exploitation. They need to know they're not alone. If you're experiencing abuse, reach out for help. You deserve respect and dignity. Thank you for listening. Stay strong.